Welcome to a special episode of Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. I am joined by Colin MacLeod, and we have been having so much fun talking about energy, music, movement, possibilities. Welcome again to the show, Colin.
Hello, Michelle. It's really nice to catch up again, and thank you for having me on the show.
We get started in our conversations, and it just out of the universe just takes us off in these amazing directions. So what the audience can anticipate for today is if you are listening by podcast and you're driving a vehicle, you're going to have to go back to listen later so you can try to engage in a movement capacity with what we're up to, but I'll try to describe it if possible. And the other piece is we're just going to explore energy today and what it means through movement and the music. So if you enjoy what you're listening to, know that you can come back to the video version of it and really play and dive deeper into it if that's something that really entices you. We always invite you to have a cup of tea before you start. And what I'm going to suggest from the Cape Breton Tea Company today is Summer Breeze. And Colin, you and I have talked about how the music, sometimes when we're really working with energy, how we kind of end up with that wave action that the seaweed does when it's in the ocean. Summer Breeze is what reminds me of that. And it's a really refreshing citrus, raspberry, blackberry blend. And it just is one of those ones that reminds you of that hot summer day and the fun down at the beach. So that's what I would entice people if they're looking for a tea they'd like to try and give something to, then Cape Breton Tea Company, that might be the way to go. All right, Colin, you ready to dive in today?
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. And before I should mention that waving of the seaweed reminds me of our movement classes that are held on a Wednesday, and I think that you'll be posting more information about that.
The
So
Movement Made Easy class. That yeah, and I
yes,
I do the movement parts based on what people require, and you've been accompanying the movements with this amazing music, which is what has led to today's podcast, because there's this synergy that's happening between the potential we have to heal and the potential of the energy held within the structure of the music. It just becomes such a juicy way to play with music and living.
and when we talk about that, when we talk about movement, the idea about I think before so much of the coronavirus pandemic, I was behind a computer and I was, just so intensely gazing at the computer working from home. And it was the idea about movement and posture that sort of led through a mutual friend, Malin Elka, who who's got the Open to Oneness podcast about connection. And so I have been looking at things from a different angle. I mean, like, here's the tea for today. That's one side of the cup, and this is the other side. And looking at posture and movement through the idea about seven chakras. So if we imagine the root chakra at the base of our spine, and then there's another 7 points right up to the crown, and I think there's more points above that. So I was absolutely fascinated to read that each of the chakras has sort of like a musical note, a frequency attached to it. So, for example, the root chakra is C. Then we've got seven chakras in total. So that's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and there's ways to. I think there's connections in between which you might touch on today, Michelle. But the idea of looking at things from another way has really helps to sort of we see new things, like, you know, the movement, the seaweed. I can see something that way, I can see something this way. And, you know, the idea about opening up the senses as well, just experiencing things in a different way, which I think we might touch on later, has actually led to the seven chakras, the idea of a seven chakras tour of Scotland in September this year. So over to you, Michelle.
Okay, before we start, what I'm going to do is I'm bringing up a card. This comes from the deck that Tanya Levy and I created. And I'm just going to hold this up for those people that are on video. Affirmations for the body and the biofield. There's 4 decks in this one deck. And what I'm playing with today is going to come from affirmations for the fascia and the spine. And so that's how the fascia comes off of the vertebra and goes out to the organ systems, and how it sends at the speed of light information about what's going on. And so what we're going to be igniting with each of the chakras through the music that you play is that connection and that vibrancy, and how quickly we can get the information flowing. When all the organ systems are working together and talking to each other because we've been moving, we have this ability then to link up all the systems in a way that is vibrant and supportive of each other, which, when sometimes, like you said, pandemic, we're all, you know, eyes on that computer and everything's locked in, that movement disappears, and that flow that needs to happen between the chakras disappears. So I'm going to share that deck, but before we start, what I wanted to share is this artwork. So for those people who are on the podcast, I am showing, it looks like a burst of rays. So we've got blue, purples, pinks coming to the top, and we have more yellows, oranges coming down towards the bottom, and there's little bubbles in there. And so sometimes people make references to what those bubbles could be. And so possibility is what I'm going to suggest. And this is from the Meeting the Divine part of the decks. The dance of life has a rhythm of beauty, grace, and ease. All is in complete balance as it is. Be open to receive and to offer to keep the dance vibrant and flowing. And this is a connection to what's called the assemblage point, or the soul seat. And that's where you're following your heart's path. You're following your truth. And energetically, what we try to have is that flow comes into the body, in through the center of the chest, goes out through the back of the body, and flows around. So you've got this lovely figure 8 patterning that goes on. But you need the assemblage point to be in alignment so the chakras can flow all the way through. So I'm going to put a surprise on you, Colin, because I know we talked about starting with the chakra, but do you have anything that's jumping to your mind as a piece of music for the assemblage point?
That was very sharp of you.
And I'm going to step back so people can just follow my movement pattern. And if you're listening to the podcast, just enjoy the music and don't worry about the movement. Just see what your body decides it wants to do. Beautiful. I liked the finish of the note at the top. It just pulled everything from the bottom all the way straight up. I don't know if people could experience that who may have been just listening and not seeing what I was up to. Anything that you noticed?
It was with all within an octave, and um, the the notes were sort of around the A major scale or the C. Sorry, and the C sharp's part of that. So there was a flow to what you were doing, and
Mm-hmm.
again, sometimes the best thing is just to sort of like jump in and play.
Yep.
And yep.
Awesome. Awesome. The movement pattern that I chose comes from the Tai Chi set called Low Cup. And that one, the fingers point down to the ground and then go up into the sky. So you have that connection of heaven and earth, which can pull you straight up the chakras. But then when the hands come down in front, the palms end up going together, and they can be flat together. They can be a little bit spaced. Two different results happen. I just put them gently together and then pushed out from that center place. And that's where if the assemblage point is in alignment, everything will be in flow, everything will be balanced. And that's what we were doing. And I did the pattern 3 times, the lucky number 3. So hopefully people just feel like a calmness that's kind of come in. Shall we dive into the root chakra?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the root chakras, so the artwork, it's shades of brown, and all of the artwork for this one is very similar. So the photograph has been run through filters that brings kind of a center line down the center of the card. And then there's these wisps that are on the outside. And that just is kind of symbolic of the way that the fascia kind of leaps out from the spine. So the note of C, root chakra, we are one. Abundance flows through the magnitude of community, grounded in worldliness, and surrounded by loving support. And in our book that has a little bit more background to it, I'm just going to add grounding, centering, stability. So those are reflexes that we have when we're born, that we develop and work with as we're learning how to walk and crawl. We have courage. This is about the whole spinal column, the bones, the teeth, the nails, and the blood cells. And the key phrasing is, I can. So as you break into whatever music you want, I'm going to step back and I'm going to follow the movement with what you're going to provide. I'm starting to run out of words. That's a good sign. We've done something. We've shifted something. Anything you wanted to share?
The lifting and coming back down, the idea of the patterns and the fluidity. So what I was doing there was playing a tune by, I think it might have been by Neil Gow, who's the grandfather of Scottish fiddle playing and who actually was around the same time as Robert Burns. So, he's a great connection for the tea choice for the Robert Burns supper, which I think people might find on a podcast that might just be coming out. And the idea about C, it's like cup. When you put it together like that, you can go like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of, when we're grounded, we can really make our best decisions, or we're in a position to make more informed decisions about our next best moves, our next best steps. And sometimes that takes practice. And the idea about the patterns, like going through something, because when playing a tune, we might sort of see the tune in a different way at different levels, because we've collected our knowledge about the tune or series or parts of that tune, and then just how that comes through. So when we're doing exercise, when we're doing movement, the more that we do from it, and we're consistently doing it, we're doing it with intention, then the more informed we can become about what we're doing. And the idea, the key that was being done there was C major. So there's no sharps or no flats. And the root chakra begins on C. So I was going from the bottom up to the high, then coming back down, which is sort of like helping to mirror the movement. And you were sort of mirroring what I was doing. So these are some of the insights.
Mm-hmm. And I was using the standing, I'll call it the standing Donu, although I wasn't doing a full movement pattern of my legs as we would in a Donu. I was using it more in the way that we would if we were doing it seated. But I was standing just so people could see me. And we easily could do that in a seated fashion. And that's on my Tai Chi Wellness video series on my YouTube channel at Michelle Greenwell. That pattern then does go up the spine, and what you're doing with that is opening up the lower dantian, which is going to be just above the root chakra, into the sacral chakra, which is where we're going to head next. But it's opening that up, and it's sending the energy up through the shoulder blades, which is the middle dantian, up to the base of the skull, which is the upper dantian, and pulling that energy up and then back down, which for the spine creates on the cerebral spinal pump the opportunity for the fluid to go up to the brain and feed the brain and then come back down the spinal column. So there's a lot going on in that tiny little piece. And if you were listening to the podcast, now when you think about that tune, or maybe you want to go back and have that tune played again, just to think about, what did you experience? What did you notice? Okay, shall we move to the note of D and the next chakra, which is sacral chakra? Okay, so the card for that one, so again, the picture is very similar to the other one. It was shades of brown. This time there's yellow, and there's a tiny little bit of kind of purple red in the one corner. And it still has that center column, kind of representative of the spine. And then it has these wisps that go off in different directions. The note of D, when the soul embraces the body and the senses are in full awareness, the experience of life opens the gift of being human on earth, open to the fullness of living. This has to do with the lumbar spine. And if I go to my book here and just double check some of the things within that, we have creativity, innate living. So that means your real reason for living, peace and joy. This one has to do with the pelvic area, reproductive organs, kidney, bladder, liquids, blood, lymph, gastric juices, synovial fluid, sperm, and living with connection. So as I say living with connection as our final word, Colin, you take it away and I'll add the movement for it. There's like snap, crackle, pop going on, ankles, knees, hips, everything was rearranging itself. And the other was when I start to really relax, I get a gurgling sound that comes through my stomach. It's like it sounds like it's growling, like I haven't eaten, but it's actually all the organs starting to move around, and the space they're creating just sends little bubbles. So for those people listening, that may sound a little bit weird, but when I really get to that relaxed point, then I know I've given all the organs the space they need to operate. And that always is delightful. So I usually kind of giggle when that happens. How did it feel for you, Colin?
There was, I'd say, patterns, palindrome. The idea about you can play something and it looks exactly the same on the other side, like the word noon. I can do a pattern of notes that I can go up and then I can come back down. And that's partly what I was doing there. There was a build up in the intensity in the second half, like going up and then coming back down. Then for some reason, I mean, I kept with a keynote of sort of being the D, but for some reason I wanted to sort of transition that to actually the A, but I sort of kept on the D, kept the activity around the D as to, because that's what we're currently focusing on. And there was very much more determination there, more get up and go.
Mm-hmm. Now
more dynamism.
The movement that I chose there was, it's referred to fondly as parting bamboo. It's one of the foundations that Master Moy put into his work. And that one, as you were talking about, you kept wanting to go up to the A. that's actually where, and it would be, A would be the top half of the chest. And so I was moving up there. So your instinct to come up to that was a good one, because that's what was moving. And there's this subtleness that happens in the sacral chakra, which is in the lower part of the abdomen, which was moving, but it was being inspired by this extra connection that was happening in the shoulders and the arms. Really interesting. All right. You're thinking.
And that was made up. That was just an ad hoc pattern. I wasn't really patterns aren't ad hoc, but I mean that was like just in the moment.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. And we were talking before we started the podcast about intuition and playing from your head or playing from your heart, which is the same as whether you move from your head or move from your heart. If you move from your head, that's like exercise, because you have a definite focus on why you're doing the movement. But when you're moving from the heart, it's about what does it feel like and where do you want it to go, and what does the body feel like doing, instead of I'm taking you for a walk. Then it's about, well, how does this music make me feel and where would I like to move with it? It's a little bit different, finding that rhythm within. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we had said from there, that was living with connection was the phrasing that came with that. That's a really interesting way that we explored it, because you could have thought living with connection was just meeting other people, but then you start to really think about how that connection comes in. Yeah. Okay, so let's move up. So we've gone from the root chakra, which is at the base of the body, sacral chakra, which is in the lower part of the abdomen. Now we've moved to the solar plexus, which is above the belly button, and it's really where the stomach kind of sits. It's in that area, the mid part of the body. And our note here is E. And for coloring, this one is now going from green towards yellow. So it's green at the bottom, yellow at the top. There's actually a yellow column all the way up the center. And it's about logic, balances artistic tendencies, while responsibility and exploration support free flow. Challenges are met with robust overview for the greatest successes. This has to do with the lower thoracic spine. So you've got the bottom part of the ribs coming towards the base of the shoulder blades, if you're looking for kind of an area to consider. And from within the pages of the book, the note of E, personal power, intuition, and will. So even though intuition is often thought of as coming from the center of the forehead as one other chakra, this one you're thinking about what your emotions have involved with it. What is it that you'd like to digest or be able to know better? You start to think of in those terms. Has to do with the small intestine, liver, digestion, stomach, spleen, gallbladder, the autonomic nervous system, muscles, and the lower back. And this one is about fully responsible for your life. Okay, so that's not a small one to fulfill here, Colin. I'll let you dive into what you would like to do there, and I'll set myself up for the movement. Okay. What was your experience, Colin?
Intense, shall we say? The choice of notes, like starting higher this time instead of lower. So I could have gone from here. So I chose to go up from here, go down to go an octave below, then back up. Again, sort of following around the 135 in terms of the root note, and then just sort of playing around with that, the idea about the faster movement with more intensity, and then all of a sudden just going up higher. Like it's almost like you're on the first floor and then you can go to the second.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed from the ground, because you know there's a familiarity there, so there's a confidence to do something new, to embrace new ideas, to look at things from a different level, to go up a layer in terms of responsibility, or you know, you've got a greater overview of what's possible.
And I'm thinking about that. I just had to double check my phrasing there, taking responsibility for your life. And then if you really look at what is the grounding piece in it, and then how do you have those levels come up? This is our third level. So being able to realize the base that you have and what goes from that is nice to be able to know you have put yourself in a place where you have everything you need. Then you can make a decision that you can feel confident you have all the pieces, rather than thinking about you need to make a decision. But if you're just staying in that one level, then sometimes you don't realize where the base parts are and how they contribute. And this gives you that place to be fully supported in there. I was explaining to you about working with you for the Movement Made Easy class, how sometimes the movements are not movements that I've typically done. I think I'm heading in one direction and I go in a different direction because the music inspires something. And that's what happened with this one. And I had taken my hands, for those people that are on a podcast, I had one palm down, one palm up. And as my hands went over to one side, the palms would flip over. And that gives your pelvis the opportunity to adjust itself in these little micro movements because of the way you place your hand. And as you were talking about the intensity, it was these really wide sweeps, and then it got small, and then it got more internal, which the hands were moving, but inside was moving even more. And that intensity picked up, and then it just was like this big breath, and then it was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm done. Beautiful. All right.
And I think to have the confidence say that what you think is the third level can be your new ground floor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so if we move to the heart chakra, let's see where that's going to take us with that thought. So that was E. So we are on F. F is all green, just like the color behind you. So you're sitting with heart chakra every day. This one is
true.
love. Pardon me?
That's actually true. That's true.
Heart chakra every day?
Yep.
That's beautiful. So love, forgiveness, compassion, and hope radiates to others when offered freely and openly. The gifts in everyone can be realized when love is unconditional. This is the middle thoracic spine. So this now is center. Most people refer to it as their heart center. The soul seat sits there. We talked about the assemblage point and the middle of the chest, but also between the shoulder blades in the back, just so people have a landmark for that. And F is our full power, and it comes from love. Heart, blood, circulation, lower lungs, rib cage, skin, upper back. And the phrase that you can reflect with while you're listening to the music this time is, with love, I live. Take it away, Colin. The movement that I chose there is another foundation that Master Mo used, and he was very cautious with it because it's very powerful, and so you don't want to overextend yourself. So I'm hoping that I kept it nice and soft as we were doing that. But I had never thought about how my hands, for those people on a podcast, my hands started down in the front near lower dantian, and palms towards me, but then you turn the thumbs and the fingers so the palms go outwards and then extend out. So we talked about how to share love out, and by offering freely and giving, you have that opportunity. I never thought about the movement pattern in that way because I'm always thinking about how does it stretch my body? What benefit is happening to me on the inside? And instead, this time it was all about how can I extend out to everyone else. And then with the palms on the outside, just softly falling down like raindrops. It just was like a shower of love that you were able to cast. That was my experience. How about for you?
Starting off with something that I knew, going into something that was completely different, and connecting between the two. So getting more into a flow of life. There was part there where I wanted to naturally sort of go down a few notes, but I kept it at the same level there. So there was maybe 5 or 6 notes where the contour just remained there rather than going down, sort of addressing real things. Going up to onto the E string, going up to the top notes, changing the key, going into changing the notes, moving away from a sharper sound maybe into a minor sound temporarily. The idea about this variety, and variety being the spice of life, and to have all these different situations in life allows us just to, there's a flow to that, and each day, you know, human beings experience different things, and it's just being okay with life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that heart chakra, when you just think There's also the phrasing we work with in our program that my business partner and I have, Natasha Polomsky, and I do raising bioenergetic awareness. And one of the exercises is the difference between giving and offering. And very often, when we want to come from our heart, we try to give. And people have a hard time receiving. So if you're giving and they can't receive, that love doesn't get there the same way. But if you offer it, they have the choice to pull it in. And it doesn't seem like it's a big difference, but it is a big difference for how much love can then be received and how much love can come in and be supportive. So I'm just going to suggest to those people listening, when you think about how you engage with other people and how you share your love, are you sharing it because you want to give, or are you sharing it because you're offering the love or the gesture or the action? Okay, so now people just need to hit pause before they go forward. Have a sip of tea, because there's a deep dive. The music takes you so far into transformation. It's really remarkable. So be very gentle with ourselves, and if you're feeling like you need to pause, then it's a good idea to pause. Shall we move forward, though, from there to the throat chakra?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're looking at the note of G. Our color is now shifted to blue. This one has a kind of a dark blue at the top with lighter blue towards the bottom. And it's not a big difference. And the tiniest little bit of rose is starting to sneak in. So that's a little bit of that intuition kind of piece to it. It still has that center column up the center and then the wisps coming off of it. Speaking our truth is the commitment to follow through on the promises we've made ourselves. Speak freely with honesty. This has to do with the cervical spine. So you're taking from the top of the shoulder, the base of the neck, and it's starting to come up the neck to the base of the skull. And our note of G is reliable and trustworthy. Has to do with your jaw, your neck, throat, voice, and your airways. Expressive link to the inner world. So we often think about when we share our voice out, but think about how that voice can come back into us in our inner world. All right, Colin. Tell me about the notes in that one.
So sometimes I was doing chords with the G, or I was doing like a ringing. So the idea about that what we say rings out, that there's, when we're singing, like there's all these extra vibrations that the notes can be a mixture. And so with the like the idea that vibrations, we can, when we speak, we might speak with intention, or we might speak softly. We're communicating something, and this communication, we have, each of us has a voice. Each of us has something special to say, something special to contribute to what's going on at a party, at a house, the conversation. We each have different insights about what's valuable about something, and it could be on the lower register, or it could be at a higher register, but we each have something to say, and it's just knowing that there's harmony in whatever we choose.
Mm-hmm. And that harmony being what you say outwardly, make sure that you're returning that grace back to you as well. So you bring that back in. So if you're complimenting someone else, or you're sharing some ideas, think about how you bring that back to yourself and acknowledge the brilliance of the idea, or the exuberance and the joy of the opportunity that conversation created, and then to be able to bring it back in. Mm-hmm.
And the idea about two notes coming together, it can actually be, there can be a resonance in the sound, like two different ideas coming together, for example. Or maybe two people looking at the same thing. And you can hear that ringing out. So the idea that thoughts, people will think about thoughts after the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Inspiration.
Mm-hmm. What I did with my head, I do have a series of neck stretches that I do, but I didn't go there. I ended up doing a figure 8 pattern, taking the head backwards and forwards really gently through that figure 8 pattern. And then I finished off with what's called injury recall technique. Dr. Sheldon Deal shares the full aspect of it. I just did a small piece of it, but I put my fingers at my jaw. And remembering throat chakra has to do with the jaw, the sphenoid, the throat, swallowing, and just loosening up any emotion that may be holding tight, and it's noticed by how it comes through the neck. So if if our nervous system is holding tight and we don't speak our truth, or we hold back our tongue, then that tension builds up. So I was just releasing it through those head nods, which lets go of any emotional attachment to whatever it is you might be having a conversation about, or making that connection. And again, it's that gift back to yourself of speaking to you about, I value the tissue and how my body is functioning, and I value the way that I'm able to feel the joy and feel the love on the inside, and keep that conversation going. Mm-hmm. Are you starting to zen out, Colin?
It's just concentration, shall we say, and just
Oh.
making sure that it's not over concentration.
It's always lovely
Um,
because we're doing this and we're getting balanced as we go along, and so it's like you become more relaxed. Everything it flows in a different way than when you first start. That's what I love about this work, and the fact that we never know exactly where we need to have release or where we what will happen when things come back into balance and flow for us, because we don't always understand what the stress is doing to the body. But then as we start to climb to that, especially we're going to the third eye and the crown chakra now, and so we're coming up into the head, to know that those ground floors are balanced in flow, supported. It just calms everything. It's beautiful. Okay, so let's move to the third eye, which is known as between or at the eyebrows, or center of the forehead. And this is the note of A. This one we've come to purple for this one. And the breath creates space for the openness of connection to expand experience. Where life causes you to hold your breath, be still, go within, and return to your breath. This has to do with the back brain to the front brain. And sometimes if you're in fight or flight, that's holding in the back brain. And really, this is pulling all the blood forward. So everything is nourishing the brain, and it helps you to actually solve problems, have creative thought processes, bring things together. So, note of A in the book here: mental power balanced with manifestation. You've got the face, ears, eyes, the sinuses, and the nervous system. In this space, the ego and the soul spirit are balanced. Now that's a great reflection. So I look forward to what you're going to bring forward, Colin. Juicy. That was great. What did you notice for yourself playing, Colin?
There's more than one way to do things. There's always at least two perspectives, being the A on the A string, or I can flip it up to the A on the E string, or I can go down to the A on the G string. They're all complementary perspectives, so we can look at things from different levels. And always the idea about sort of going out, taking things in, then coming back to just coming back into our body. The idea about, imagine a bird flying over, an eagle flying over the landscape, taking something in, then they're going back to their nest. And the insights that that can bring, standing back from something, look at shaking the movement just to sort of keep the perspectives fresh. The insights that that can yield, or shifting a mood, taking a step, moving, playing in a different way. So there were different. So I was playing the notes in a different style there, and it was sort of similar to what was done before, yet it was different at the same time. So it was sort of like a cousin, and that might just be switching 2 or 3 notes, but just how much of a difference that yields. And that helps the freshness of outlook. That just re-energizes. What a way to re-energize.
Yeah, I was thinking about just down from our house is actually where the bald eagles live. And they kind of, we have this waterway, so depends on the rain how big it is. Sometimes it's smaller, but it's all fresh water, although the ocean does feed into it. So when the tide comes in, then we have this salt water, and then it ends up getting replaced. And they sit right at that spot in this, they have this magnificent nest there. And the eagles, very often, we're always watching to see where they are and seeing, are they sitting in the nest? Are they sitting on some of the trees outside of there? And sometimes they like to come around the house here, and then they'll just float above us and just circle. So as you were talking about perspectives and what you see in a different vantage point, depending on where they choose to position themselves, what they see of the world is so different, even though it's in the same place. Yeah, really interesting. The movement for that I chose from postural reflexes. And so expanding the shoulder seams and the hip seams. So I was making everything really big and then bringing it in small. So compacting it. So just changing. When you change those 2 sets of seams, it completely reboots the brain. So when you're having trouble coming up with a new idea, or you're kind of thought in a stuck process, forward vision or something, gives you a chance to nourish the brain in a way that it can start to see other perspectives and start to look at other possible solutions. So that was the reason for that particular bit of movement. And then I took my fingers, put them on top of the head, and pushed into my hand. And that opens up the top of the head and connects it down to the base of the spine. I had put my hands behind onto my sacrum and pushed there. And that's that connection between root chakra really to crown chakra. And so you've got this expansion contraction sideways, but then you have the spine up and down. And I made the connection of those pieces as well. And then, as you were saying, just that free movement, I just felt like I just needed to just move. And then that's where your playing just started to really bring alive how much movement we have possible. And all these ways now I can move because I allowed those parts of me to open. Yeah. Okay, crown chakra. We made it to the top. So we're looking at the note of B, and this one is reflective in white. It looks kind of silvery, silver gray, whitish. I know it's looking a little bit on the camera coming through here, probably looks more white with cream. And it has that column up, but more predominant in this one is there's two columns that go up right beside it. And it's like the sacrospinalis muscle, which is on both sides of the spine and has micro pieces of muscle, so it smaller segments of muscle rather than a big long muscle. Those all feed. So this represents this lovely duality that comes into it. Chakras merge to provide a sense of peace, serenity, and connection to the universe. The big picture predominates over little details and diversions. None of us know anything about diversions. And the note of B from our book here is about peace and flow. It has to do with the brain and the central nervous system, peace, serenity, and knowing. All right. I'm not sure what I'm going to do movement-wise, but I'm kind of being guided to say, move in the way you wish to move. So you might see me move, and you don't feel like reflecting that way. Please move in whatever way you feel. This crown chakra is opening you up to what's possible. So move in whatever way guides you with the music. I think could have danced for like 20 minutes. Beautiful. How did that feel?
Joyous. And the idea about just what you can create by bringing notes together. So the idea that, you know how two magnets come together? Sometimes you'll have opposite polarities, so it sort of goes like this, come close together and then they'll go away again. But sometimes it might be a plus and a minus, so it goes like that, or it goes like that. So you sort of, it becomes a thicker line, and when you're going like that, that's like a plus and a minus coming together. That's like sort of equilibrium. And so I was going to a certain note at the top, which was a B. And then, so I was going to the top B in first position with the violin. I didn't sort of go anywhere further up the violin. And the idea about within that, I played 2 octaves within 2 octaves of the violin, so a range of about 16 notes. And what you can do with 16 notes is, holy smoke, like what variety is there? You know, the possibilities, the inspiration, and the idea about, you know, just all this inspiration sparking, and it's there to be grabbed, and you can actually come back down. And I started on the same note that I finished on.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that, just as you were saying, to pick it up and grab it. I'm just going to grab the picture again, because, you know, we often think, well, we were talking chakras, right? So the brain goes, oh, base of the spine, come up to the top, to the crown chakra. You know, you've got the fascia coming off of it, because that's what this is representing, because on a structural kind of thing. But what you're just talking about is that's always the trip out. But the trip in is so interesting, because look at all the ways it all feeds back in, and then how it comes to that centerpiece, and then what it does on the inside. It's really interesting. Thank you for that perspective, because I've been thinking about always, you know, how else can I assist? How else can I reach out? How else can I explain? You know, those kinds of things. And we talked about the offering versus giving. So if you offer out, what comes back? How does it come back? What is the joy that comes back as you're pulling into those pieces? Yeah. Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And you know, I think for me that's the first time going from C D E F G A B, and it's almost, you know, I was just thinking that maybe people could actually use this as a complete morning workout to get themselves ready for the day ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's like 7 days. They could split it up. You know, there's something there.
Yeah. It's very fun. And then it depends what you want to do with a different chakra. Yeah.
Or where you want to start your day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's another
And
podcast,
that's
Colin.
something else. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm feeling like just cutting the deck and pulling one piece to kind of pull the whole package together. Um, so what I've pulled is the golden Kundalini. So Kundalini is the energy that travels up and down the spine. Okay. So weaving through our spine and kissing each chakra, this energy flow connects us to the auric field and the brilliance of resonance. Be open to receive the expansion it provides and the intuition. I think that's a lovely way to finish. And for those that can't see the card, it's a beautiful card. It's browns, blacks, whites, and it's what would you call that? Reflective in all directions, because you can reflect sideways, you could reflect up to down, but also even going into the center and back out. It's like a multi-dimensional picture in itself. Okay. How would you like to finish up, Colin? Do you want to talk a little bit about how people can find you? What's coming up?
So people can find me. First of all, thank you very much, Michelle, for an enjoyable podcast with the emerging next steps, and it was an emerging story, and our life is what you make of it, and
Mhm.
it was a very enjoyable podcast. So thank you. People can find me at celticfiddleguru.com. If you've or email me support at or Colin at celticfiddleguru.com. We have weekly music session jams online. At the moment, they're Mondays and Wednesdays. So if you go to celticfiddleguru.com, you'll be able to see from one of the buttons at the top that you can find out more information about that. We are doing weekly movement classes, Michelle, for I think maybe the next 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
if you loved the sample of what we've done today, then please, I think Michelle, if people go to your website dancedebut.com,
They'll find some
then they
information and
can.
they can email me personally, and I'm happy to, because we started this session. So I'm happy to bring them in at any point, and we have the recordings already, which people are rewatching the recordings to reap the benefits over and over. And that's info@dancedebut.com, DANCEDEBUT.
And I'll say that there's a Seven Chakras tour. Yes, there is. There's a Seven Chakras tour of Scotland happening in September this year, working through. So we'll be sort of working through the senses, or on an inspirational tour of Scotland through the food, the music, the culture, the ancient part of Scotland. We'll be going to parts of Scotland where the main, we'll be going to pristine parts, shall we say, looking at these from different perspectives, and just again bringing in the senses to heighten the senses, and just you'll think you're happy when you begin, and by the end, you'll have really enjoyed yourselves. So that's what's happening on this side of the Atlantic. Over to you, Michelle. What for yourself? What's happening? What's in the pipeline?
What's on the pipeline? So we've got the Movement Made Easy class online, which is great. I teach a step dancing class online as well, and I'm just starting one for kids. So I've got an adult and kids version, and I also offer a YINtegration class, which is taking more of these ideas about energy and how energy works, providing it with movement, but setting it to a goal. And I have people that come in online and in person for that one. So I'm teaching both at the same time. And again, people can just send a message to info@dancedebut.com, and I'm happy to respond to whatever the request is. For those people who are in business and are entrepreneurs or work with a team, there is a brand new program coming up called Balancing Business. And that's looking at how you feel reflects in your business, and also how your business is doing will be reflective of how you're doing your everyday living. And so if anybody's interested in becoming a part of that, we have a men's group and we have a ladies group, which is really interesting. So I'm looking forward to getting that to launch. And from the tea perspective, the Cape Breton Tea Company is getting ready to launch. Officially, the website is up and the tea blends are all there. And I've been sipping away on tea all afternoon, and it's gotten cold, but it's beautiful. So I'm quite pleased with the way the blend's hot or cold. So it's the Cape Breton Tea Company, CBT company.square.site, that you can find that. And we look forward to where our conversation's going to go next, Colin. I don't know. Something's on the horizon. That's what I know.
Absolutely. And Michelle, thank you for letting me be a guest on your podcast. So
My pleasure.
appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone. And if you've listened to the podcast and you really want to see the movement, make sure you go to my YouTube channel at Michelle Greenwell, and and you'll see it in the playlist for the podcast, Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. Thanks for listening or watching online.